we go. Deck 78.
Hey, welcome back to Deck 78. This is Mark A. Altman. I'm here with DAREN DOCHTERMAN, Steven Melching, and Ashley Miller here as we grab a seat on Deck 78 for another podcast mission. And this week, we're joined by director and makeup effects genius from the famous K&B Effects, Robert KURTZMAN, along with the star of his Wishmaster movie, Andrew DIVOFF. And this was really interesting because, we didn't know Andrew was joining the panel till about 90 seconds before we went on stage.
Wow.
And it was funny because, as you'll see when you listen, Ashley and I had the most wonderful conversation with both of them. Really fascinating conversation about Wishmaster, about the nature of working in prosthetics, how, playing a character like Andrew does in the Wishmaster films. It's a really interesting freewheeling conversation. And I think both Ashley and I were surprised at how well it went, given how we weren't exactly expecting what transpired. And KURTZMAN was really interesting in turn, talking about, of course, conceiving of the originally optioning the From Dusk Till Dawn from Quentin Tarantino and his directorial sophomore effort, Wishmaster. So it's a really interesting conversation. Even if you're not familiar with film or not a big horror fan, I think you'll find an interesting dissection of horror. And I have to say, Ashley, you'll probably appreciate this. Andrew DIVOFF, who I went up to him and I said to him, this is true. I said, look, I've been in the business for a long time, so I know not to confuse the art with the artist. But for some reason, I had it in my head, because you placed these loathsome characters like in Lost and in Wishmaster, that you were just a dick, that you were a jerk. I was like, I had in my head, you must be an awful human being. And I said, you turned out you're like the nicest guy. And I wasn't kidding. You're like the nicest guy in the world. And Ashley, that was the case, right? Wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. No, he was just the sweetest guy. And, he was just, first of all, he was just damn happy to be there and be on stage. You could tell that he really loved being with the fans. And let me tell you something, there was a pretty serious turnout for that panel. They were all very excited to see him. And he knew how to deliver what they were after. But I also appreciated that, look, when we talk to actors, directors, to really creatives of any kind, we like to get into their process a little bit. It's one thing, anybody can ask a question like, what was it like to work on blah, 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 and get anecdotes. It's another thing entirely to talk to people about what it is like to work inside of a process, and to have a couple of people who worked inside of the process in the way that KURTZMAN and DIVOFF did, and to really get them into a conversation about what it's like to be creatives in this business. And it requires a degree of openness. And I think that DIVOFF's just his basic, he's almost huggable for a guy that you look at and you think, oh, he's just got to be one of the worst people on earth, given his filmography.
Well, do you remember? It was so funny. So then he had his booth. He had all these posters from Wishmaster.
Oh,
he says, well, I want to sign posters for you guys. And we're like, all due respect, thank you. That's very kind of you. But, we're not autograph guys. You don't need to do that. He said, no, but you asked me such smart questions. And I really enjoyed that. And it was really special. Let me do this. And we're both like, it's really not necessary. We really don't need you guys to sign posters for us. It's okay. And he says, well, let me sign for your listeners then. You can give away posters for your listeners. And we're like, at that point, it looks like, okay, We didn't want to be rude, and I'm sure some of you out there would love it, right? So he signed a couple of posters. So if you want a Andrew DIVOFF signed Wishmaster poster, please email us at trekspertsplus@gmail.com. We'll be happy to send that out to you, free of charge, if you're one of the first people to request it from us. And it was very generous. We appreciate Andrew sharing that with you, and we're glad to be able to do it. So anyway, it was lovely, just indicative of what a lovely, lovely guy he is. And then, of course, we had to figure, because really the thing was, we didn't want to have to take him back home, because you know how hard it is to get anything without crumpling it. It's like, it's a pain in the ass to bring posters back, because if you don't have a tube, then like, how are you going to avoid them getting crumpled in transit? And so it's like, we didn't want that aggravation.
So enjoy these crumpled
in
posters.
transit is like a short film that
they're
I
not
made in
crumpled.
college.
We reasoned it out. It's fine. Don't worry.
Good.
It's okay. It's okay. We made a wish and it came true. So there you go.
Anyway,
big thanks to Robert KURTZMAN and Andrew DIVOFF for joining us for a fabulous conversation about their respective careers and the Wishmaster saga. And they'll join us in just a minute as soon as we pause for these brief commercial messages. Stay tuned.
Hilton brings you new ways to stay, with experiences that let you capture the glory days. Introducing the Graduate Hotels. Each inspired by local college towns, these stays are always original and never boring. Get in touch with traditions all across the country and enjoy a stay that's a class above the rest. Book at Graduate Hotels with Hilton Honors Points at Hilton.com. It's a win-win. Hilton, for the stay.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Out here, there's no one way of doing things. No unwritten rules. And no shortage of adventure. Because out here, the only requirement is having fun. Bank of America invites kids 6 to 18 to golf with us. For a limited time, sign them up for a free 1-year membership, giving them access to discounted tee times at thousands of courses. Learn more at bankofamerica.com/golf with us. What would you like the power to do? Bank of America. Restrictions apply. See BofA.com/golf with us for complete details. Copyright 2025 Bank of America Corporation.
So without any further ado, I want to welcome the visual effects, makeup effects legend, and of course, a great writer and director in his own right, Robert KURTZMAN. And a surprise guest, star of Wishmaster, among a very illustrious career that ranges from everything, including Lost, and just a diverse array of amazing titles. But they're reuniting Robert and Andrew DIVOFF on stage. Welcome, Andrew. And welcome to you, who are in for a treat, because you'll get to ask the question, any questions you want at the end of the panel.
Within reason.
Yeah.
Nothing personal.
Well,
too personal. Yeah.
I want to go back to the very beginning, Robert.
Reason, by the way, is a broad spectrum, so
That's very
go for it.
Obviously you've had such a successful career, which started with this amazing career in effects makeup. But who were your inspirations in terms of everybody from Jack Pierce to Dick Smith to Rick Baker? Like, what were the people that inspired you to pursue this, and what was it that sort of turned the key in your brain that sent you in this direction?
All of them. Jack Pierce, of course. There's a British makeup effects artist, did all the Hammer movies, Roy Ashton. Because those were very influential movies for me growing up. They were my favorites over like the Universal movies. And then of course Dick Smith, Rick Baker, John Chambers did Planet of the Apes, and Island of Dr. Moreau, and all the films, in the 70s, late 60s and 70s. So all of those. And of course, then when I got into the business, we were kind of the next generation under, Stan Winston and Rick Baker, those guys. So got in the early 80s, which was kind of just as the boom was happening, the effects boom, where everybody wanted rubber creatures and special effects in their movies. So, I grew up watching all those films with late night horror host shows and Saturday afternoon movies. That was the only time we could see those films, because there was no streaming or anything at the time. And you'd have to wait 1 year to see each of those films again. So you'd circle the TV guide and try to make a schedule. So,
how do you go about sort of learning your craft? Because you just mentioned it's the infancy of home video. So it's not like you could rent a movie and sort of go frame by frame and sort of say, how did they do that? And maybe if it was something that really blew you away, you had to wait till it came on TV a year later. So how'd you go about sort of becoming a master of the craft?
Well, initially, like when I was in high school, I was just doing art and drawing monsters and things and sculpting. It wasn't until once I graduated, I went to art school for a year and realized that wasn't what I wanted to do either. I didn't want to go through 4 years of art school and not learn what I wanted to learn, which was mainly creature effects and things. So I picked up and I moved to LA when I was 19, and I took a 12-week makeup course with a place called Joe Blasco's makeup school, and it had a very, very lean, small effects portion of that. Most of it was corrective and beauty makeup, but it got me, enough to realize, I had a really bad portfolio, like coming out of school. It was embarrassing. But it got me in the door at John Buechler's, who was doing all these movies for Charlie Band. So I kind of started out similar to people who started out in the Roger Corman school of filmmaking, because they didn't pay well. If you had some artistic skill and you were a hard worker, then you could get in and work on these films. And so I kind of learned those first 5 years or so in the business, working on so many movies with Charlie and the other artists that were coming up in the business at the same time. We kind of fed off each other and we worked with each other. And then on every night we'd get off work, we'd have a garage. Most of us lived together, effects guys. And we'd have a garage where we'd set up workbenches and we'd go out there and sculpt and create makeups and try to build our portfolios. And so
Charlie made Roger Corman look like Warner Brothers. So what an amazing, to start under Charlie. But people forget how many people, started under Charlie Band, and you had their first, experience working for Charlie. And I just wonder, sort of, your first big credit was Night of the Creeps for Fred. What would you tell yourself now? Like, what would having all these years on his belt, all the success, if you could look back at as a young special effects artist at the time, what would you tell yourself that you know now that at the time you were very naive about this business?
Well, I kind of learned the ins and outs of the business coming up in the 80s. So, I still say the same thing. If you want to do it, you have to be a hard worker and you have to be ready for rejection, especially as a filmmaker. And you have to have a thick skin. And if you work hard and you prove to who you're working for, which is why I worked around town at all the shops, like Stan Winston's, Mark Shostrom's, Kevin Yeager's. This was all before I started the company with Howard and Greg, K&B Effects. So you garner a reputation, first off, being able to do lab work, make molds, because even if you're not going to set or sculpting, because a lot of shops have their key guys sometimes, but if you could always make molds, then you could always work at different studios. So kind of being a jack of all trades, being able to do makeup on set and sculpt and paint and make molds, then you're kind of covered.
Andrew, I want to ask you, what was your gateway drug to the business? Like, what was your inspiration in terms of discovering that you had this passion for acting?
It came about. So I came to the States when I was 10 years old, and when I arrived, apparently my English wasn't at all proficient. And so I had a couple of really very ugly kind of nicknames, and so it turned me into a very introverted kid. And although that I knew that all of these fantastical stories, El Quijote, all of these just sort of personalities, characters lived in my head, and I thought I would literally have plays go on in my head, and so I decided that I wanted to get over this introvertedness, and I started several years later, about 7-8 years later, I started getting into cold reading classes and getting into acting classes, and it was a safe zone for me because everybody in there sort of had this sort of earnest wanting to express themselves, wanting to get outside of their shell, and little by little, I noticed and realized that wow, it was kind of sticking, and I was learning, and I would I grew up watching all American shows. A lot of times, for instance, I'll just go into an accent and people will wonder, well, where does that, it might be kind of a Humphrey Bogartish thing. Well, growing up in Venezuela, we would watch a lot of American TV in English. And that was a big help in me learning English there. My mom was American, but we spoke Spanish at home. And so a lot of times I realize now that all these accents, all these things were kind of embedded in me when I was a young kid. And so I wanted to be a cowboy. I wanted to be a sort of play the war hero. Combat was a show that was there. Vic Morrow, of course, was one of my favorite actors. Gary Cooper. Grew up with all those guys, and so when I came to California, having sort of escaped from school out east. Russian area studies linguistics I was studying at Georgetown, and I had no business being there. Anyway, so I came out west when my father retired. He headed up Goodyear in Venezuela. He retired, came to California. I went out there and was driving a limo to support myself, pay my bills, and again I got into classes where I had kind of gotten the bug and just was able to play all these characters, get outside of myself, and lo and behold, little by little, I'd go out to auditions, and I was starting to land them. And one of the things that, of course, helped a lot was accents, being able to do the various accents, and so. It opened up a whole new world of characters, and I was beyond amazed at wow, this is really cool, and it feels cool, and it's great to get that, especially in the acting class. It was eventually ended up with Milton Katselas, and that was a wonderful learning sort of mission. It was just kind of 3 years of just intense and intensive learning. And so, again, being able to go out and do auditions and land some roles and play these different characters and get into them totally was just, I couldn't believe my luck. I was charmed. I was beyond amazed.
Can we talk about the makeup a little bit for you? So when you get onto Wishmaster... It is, absolutely. And you could use a little foundation, but we can talk about that afterwards. No, when you get onto Wishmaster, you are not just acting. You are acting through a prosthetic. And it's not funny ears like freaking Star Trek. It is a full prosthetic.
Right.
And there are actors who can do that, and there are actors who cannot do that for various reasons. So when you started on that show, when you started preparing to play that character, what did you have to do? And what do you have to do generally to prepare yourself for the chair, for doing the performance? Does it change, how you approach the script and how you deal with the director?
That's a great question, especially the chair question. That became a sort of a thing of its own. But I was lucky enough to have Robert on my side here, and he, he told me, he said, when the makeup goes on, it's good. You're literally
restricted by the weight of it, by the fact that just think of rubber bands that are so damn strong that, and Robert said to me, you're going to feel as if you're overacting, but you have to do this. You have to really force the makeup in order to get really even the most minimal gesture across to the audience. And wow, that tripped me out. But first time in makeup, I started to articulate it, and it was weird. It was just a weird feeling. But the beauty of it was the art of it. And the first day of filming, Robert told me to go into my trailer, turn the lights, dim them down, and look in the mirror and just articulate, work it, see how it worked, see what was actually going to, and see how hard I had to sort of force the gesture in order to get that minimal smile or just be able to open the mouth wider than normal. And you're right, it is hard. One of the luxuries of it, I suppose, is being able to hide behind that artwork. And so knowing, in a sense, because I was thinking to myself, I'm never going to pull this off. This is never going to work, man. But the beauty of it was, and with Robert's instruction of sitting down and watching yourself and articulating it, working the mask, I started to get not comfortable, but I started to say, oh, okay, I see how this works. Sitting in the chair, that was a trip of its own. I mean, the excitement of having the makeup on, I think after about the third time, it was gone. Completely gone.
The thrill was gone.
But coming in early in the morning and seeing that brush is kind of like that Star Wars shot of the spaceship flying over you and going forever. But here comes the brush with that white glue. It looked like Elmer's glue, but it would go on. It'd be cold first thing, and the artists, Garrett Immel, would say, "Well, this is going to be cold, and are you ready to start?" Because they knew, because at first it wasn't a shock, but it was like, okay, we're here, we're doing it. And then after about half an hour, they would kind of tilt the chair back and say, hey, if you want to crash out, we've finished the part where you had to stay awake, so you can crash out now and we can do our work. And it was kind of nice, be in dreamyland and then wake up in the doctor's chair. But nothing but the fondest memories of it, really.
Well, now that Ashley's let the genie out of the bottle with Wishmaster, I guess we're going to jump to Wishmaster. I want to talk about, obviously, you had such success in makeup effects. You created the ILM of makeup effects companies. You worked on some of the biggest films of all time. You started developing properties for yourself to direct, obviously, notably from Dusk Till Dawn. But then you had, great with Wishmaster, obviously Demolitionist. Can you talk about sort of the road to directing when it's sort of the spark ignited and sort of maybe some of the lessons you learned from other auteurs that you worked with over the leading to your directing career?
Well, I always wanted to be a director as well, but my pathway into that was the art side of things and getting in through special effects. But in doing that, I learned, I was storyboarding sequences for movies, for other people, effects, just specific effects things, coming up with how we were going to shoot them and things like that. So initially, that's the bug. Once you start doing that, you realize, oh, I can do this on my own for my own projects. So, and as far as being on set, I've been on set with all the grades. And I really love to kind of stand behind the camera and watch how they work. Like when I'm on set with Sam Raimi, I love watching how Sam works. Same with John Carpenter, any of the guys, Wes Craven. And you realize how they deal with actors, and some are different. Some are more technical. They're not like actors who've turned it to directing, so they approach it from a different place. But the main thing is that you hire people to come and do their thing, so you have to give them the freedom. You're not like. One thing I learned was never go, and I probably did it a few times, but never go out and then perform the scene for the actor, like as a director. Like, here's what you're going to do, and you kind of walk through it. You learn that what you do is you bring the actors in, and then you see what's going to happen, because a lot of it can be organic, and that's the best way to watch how a scene unfolds. If you get too focused on your specific shots or how you were going to cover it, basically you do there's this thing you do called overheads, and I learned this on my first film, where you lay out all your camera angles and overheads and you mark them by numbers, and it breaks down to your shot list as well. And once you do all that homework, then you never really look at it again when you get to set. You may look at effects sequence, you might look and see what's gonna be the visual, this is the visual effects shot, or whatever. But you kind of, that what your coverage is, and then you can just let it happen, and sometimes there's happy accidents or happy things that actors bring to the performance or to the blocking that just makes it even better, So I try not to get too stuck on what I put on paper and say, this is how it's gotta be, But anyway, I learned all that from watching all those directors over the years. And when I first got in the business, I thought, I want to be a director. And then I got on my first movie set and I kind of realized I had no clue how all the departments worked together. I didn't know what a grip was. I didn't know what an the gaffer was. And so that took years, a few years of learning how all the departments work together, which helped when I did want to direct. So
let's talk a little bit specifically about how you dealt with actors, because you come from a very different place from most of those guys that you worked for. You have real, literally hands-on experience with the makeup effects, literally putting your hands on the actors. Does it have an impact on you in terms of how you direct the actors? Does that particular knowledge and experience change the way that you interact with them and how you help them, guide them through a scene? Is that different from what you've seen other directors do, or?
Well, I've worked with directors who don't do anything, like the ADs do all the interaction with the actors, which is weird to me. And then I've seen directors who are more specific to the actors and less on the technical side of things. Now, of course, I come from the technical end of things. So I do a lot of my pre-production planning and everything is focused on like how we're gonna achieve a stunt or effects or whatever. And over the years, like honestly, I was terrified on my first film to direct actors. And you do things that you realize you shouldn't. You should just let them do their thing. Which I've had actors where I go to tell them and they go, "You're the director, I'm the actor. Just let me do my thing." And so you realize, okay, cool. So and the dumbest thing I ever did was try to show how to do a fall down the steps. Like you gotta get hit. It hits you like the mortar's gonna hit you, and you fly back and you land on your back. And I did the gag, and then I got up and I went, "Oh, I shouldn't have done that, this dumbass." So you get really enthusiastic, but
I think that's great. Yeah. I think that's great. I do. I love it.
But I think I'm a better director now than obviously when I first started, and it's just because now I realize, don't overthink things. Like let things just happen, and have a plan. If the plan changes, that's great. But that can happen if you have your ducks in a row ahead of time, and then you just kind of see what happens on set. It's very organic. So,
Andrew, I want to ask you. Robert talked about what working with some of the masters of the directors he learned so much from. I'd love to know, maybe without naming names, directors that maybe you weren't, they did all the things wrong that Robert's alluding to. I mean, it's so interesting that we revere Hitchcock, and yet he was not open to, everything had to be precisely blocked and follow storyboards. And I would imagine something like that would be very frustrating for an actor. Most great directors aren't that slavish to their, blocking and their boards. But can you talk about maybe things that, maybe for aspiring talent, like they should absolutely not, this is not the way to talk to an actor?
I can't really say that, wow, that particular person really, I have a couple, but that's really more on a personal, person-to-person level, eye-to-eye, face-to-face, and I'll leave it at that. And there are a couple that, you want to biatch slap every now and then, but but most of all, this is a collaborative effort. It is, and I accept that, and I understand it. And interestingly enough, after the first couple of roles where I was the antagonist, and I can be sitting there drinking a coffee and thinking about something, and somebody could look at me and think, "Oh, wow, that guy's about to pop, man. He looks evil, or something's about to go down." I can be thinking about a funny cartoon and look like I don't know, like I have a Charles Manson look on my face. I don't know, but people mistake my sort of my intensity in the sense that I'll think about something and I'll think about it intensely, and you'll see my eyes going, and I'll be thinking about something, but I'm seeing it play in my head, and to me it makes sense, and I don't often think about how people might be looking at me and thinking, "Wow, that guy looks like he's pissed off all the time," and I imagine that sometimes I do. So I realized what I had to do is actually, on a couple of occasions, approach the director and let them know, speak to them and say, "I like to be directed. I do. I enjoy being directed." And again, it's a collaboration. I understand that. They understand it. The piece has been written. You're here to direct it. I'm here to portray this particular character. But any insight you have, whether I feel you and I can come to an agreement about how valid or not it is, but I would say just, and especially for the aspiring talent, it's a collaboration. It ain't about you. It's essentially it's teamwork. You're going to a set, which is your battleground, if you want to think of it that way. You have a job to do. There's a general. You may be playing a general in the movie, but you ain't the general on the set. You're an actor, and again, I go back to I love the fact that it is a collaboration, but I did realize that, wow, they're not approaching me and they're not sharing. Robert was great about it because he would, in fact, and they call it giving a line reading. I don't mind that at all. And again, it's a point of view. It's another, within a compass. It's another degree on the compass that comes to bear, that makes sense. That's part of that collaboration. And all together, we figure it out, and it makes for a better story and a better sort of participation with your fellow actors, and I mean, even down to the crew. I think it's so important, especially for aspiring actors, that you don't float onto a set and you don't float off it. You're not a supreme being. This is again, it's a team effort, and it's about coming out with this fantastic story that spreads across this beautiful screen that you get to play a part in, literally. And so I'm very much about, and I realized that I had to approach, and I had to say, because you figure, well, the director, and I'm speaking about some TV shows that I love doing, love being part of, but you have to let them know that I did, at any rate, let them know that I love to be directed. I love to be part of this thing. I'm happy to be here. So please give me some impetus. Give me some ideas. Give me some fire off my synapses, please.
I want to ask you both. When you're making any film, often you can think this movie's going to be great and could turn out to be terrible. You think this movie's terrible and could turn out to be great, right? Look at Jaws, how miserable they were, and they thought this was going to be the worst movie of all time. And, so my question is, it must be super gratifying after all these years, to see, people who are coming up to you and, love Wishmaster, talking about, a lot of films, are forgotten, but Wishmaster is a film that just keeps gaining in popularity, that's beloved. You've had so many people come up. Does it surprise you that this film has such an afterlife and that it endures?
I don't know if it surprises me. It's because I've had so many movies I've been involved with that have that happen to them. And it's just each generation, like people who love it, introduce it to another generation, and it just keeps going. And, there's quite a few movies that came out that I worked on that weren't successful when they came out, but now they're beloved and people are constantly collecting. They're coming out in different versions on 4K and all this stuff. So that's the other thing is, like, now with the technology and everything, there seems to be every so many years you get a new version of something and a revisiting of something with new special features and whatever. So I'm happy that it's happened, and I love it when people come up and they're like, oh my God, I would love this movie. I showed it to my kids or whatever, and everybody just loves it. So that's gratifying. Yeah, sure.
Absolutely, and when a family comes up and the dad's wearing the Wishmaster T-shirt, you figure, well, you'll be talking to him, but then the kids will come up and say, I really loved you in Wishmaster, and I'm thinking, 12 years old, so that's absolutely wonderful, and it's heartwarming, and it's obviously years have passed. We're going on 30, is it? Yeah. Mm-hmm. However, when you're speaking to that young person, it's in the moment. We're talking about something that is essentially frozen in time, and we're referring to that. And it's just a really a wonderful back and forth interaction. And so whereas I thought I'd be talking to the guy with the T-shirt with the Wishmaster T-shirt, I'm talking to the kids. We're going back and forth, and it's just when they leave, I've got a bigger smile than when they came up, and so that it is. It just it's so rewarding. Absolutely.
And, I'd be remiss if we didn't ask you, Robert, about, obviously From Dusk Till Dawn, which was, something you wanted to direct originally, but you conceived of, you created the story for, and is a film that obviously is beloved that you went on to work on. It spawned a TV series as well. Can you tell us a little bit about your that journey with From Dusk Till Dawn, and obviously your relationship with Quentin? So it was about 88, I think, is when I conceived the story, and I wrote a 24-page treatment. Originally, John Esposito, our mutual friend, was going to write the screenplay, and he was doing Graveyard Shift, the Stephen King film. He went away to do that, and he said, look, I'm not going to be able to write this. Let's just find somebody to write this. I wasn't confident enough to tackle it myself at that time. I could come up with an idea and put the basics down on paper, but laying out all that cool dialogue and everything wasn't me. So we were introduced to Quentin through a mutual friend who said, hey, there's this kid, he worked at a video store, works at, I forget what it's called, down in Laguna Beach or something. And he's written a bunch of screenplays that he might be somebody you want to look at. So Quentin sent me 3 screenplays as sample scripts: Natural Born Killers, True Romance, and Reservoir Dogs.
Fantastic.
So, and I was like, holy shit, these are great, And he's definitely got, it's definitely, some of it was like so kind of hardcore dialogue-wise and risque, whatever. But we were like, oh, he's perfect. Plus, when I met with him, he was into all the same kind of movies, even more so. He's a total cinephile. So, but we connected on the same kind of horror films and things that we loved, and talked about how we wanted to do the movie and how it was going to be 2 movies in one, or like halfway through the movie, it switched gears, which is why it took so long to get anybody interested in it, because every time we took it to a studio or whatever, they would reject it. But it was also, there was a couple scenes in there, like the Cheech Marin scene, which just pushed it over the top to where
when he was talking about cats.
Yeah, where they're like, no, we're not making this movie. In fact, when I was directing it, I was working with Sam Elliott on, was it Tombstone or the other one? Sam's on.
He was on Tombstone.
Tombstone.
The greatest movie ever made.
So he needed a broken arm thing made for when he got shot to restrict his performance or whatever. And we had worked with him on a movie called Sibling Rivalry, where we had to do his corpse head and everything. And so I sent the script to Sam to play, to see if he'd be interested in doing the Earl McGraw opening that Michael Parks plays in the movie, because I thought he would be perfect. And so he read it, and then he was kind enough to contact me back and say, this is not my cup of tea. So he just was like, he thought it was a bit, it pushed the limits a bit. And but anyway, he did read it, which was fun. But ended up, trying to get it off the ground for about 8 years, up and down. We had lots of up and downs almost happening and then not and whatever. And then Robert Rodriguez and Quentin were talking one day, and Robert asked, hey, whatever happened to that script from Dusk Till Dawn? And he goes, well, Kurtzman owns that script, and he wants to direct it. So what happened was, going kind of full circle there, once Robert got interested, he was hot because he was coming off El Mariachi and Desperado, and he was looking for his next project. And after 8 years, me and John were like, man, we can keep, trying to struggle to push this. And we were trying to make a $3 million movie. And now it was going to change. It was going to be a much bigger film. I was still going to do the effects with my K&B, and it was a big showcase for us as well. And I'm like, and I get a story credit, and we were like, let's just do this. It's going to be a bigger movie. It's going to have, bigger stars in it, and we're going to have the ability to throw everything at it, effects-wise. So, and that's how it happened. And then Quentin wanted to play that role, so he beefed up that whole character with the pervy stuff, and we extended out the hotel sequence, and then that's the movie.
So let me ask you about, again, sort of wrapping it back to Wishmaster a little bit. So, Wishmaster was kind of lightning in a bottle in the sense that, it spawned a franchise, very respectable franchise in terms of, again, we've talked about the audience who, to this day, wants to talk to you about that film, the sequels, you name it. And, we have the lightning in a bottle phrase, but if you think about that, right? You said you worked for all of the greats, John Carpenter, Sam Raimi, Clive Barker, for God's sake, even John McTiernan on Predator. These are all guys, Mike Flanagan, these are all guys who turn in things that consistently connect, right? If they were batters in Major League Baseball, they would be some of the greatest batters of all time. So there's something that they're doing that's making the material connect. From your experience working with them, your experience working on Wishmaster, directing that film and creating that story and that world, what do you think is the thing that really makes the audience connect to a film or to a character?
I don't think you can guess that up front. You literally can't. So you have to just believe in the project you're doing and believe that you're going to make the best thing you can out of it, but you have no clue because so many obstacles get thrown at you during production. I mean, you can go into it thinking you could have the best script ever, the best cast ever, and go into it, and there's going to be 100 obstacles that could derail the whole thing. And then there's marketing it and the time it comes out and whether that connects with the audience at that time. So it's really hard to quantify that. So I think it's a crapshoot because there's been so many times I've been on a film production and go, this is going to be the biggest piece of shit ever. And I had a miserable time shooting it. And then it comes out and it's very successful. So, and you're like, well, some people fail up a hill too. So it's like, but I don't know any.
Has that been your experience as well? I mean, you've worked on things where you just think this movie's gonna be terrible. It turns out great, and vice
very
versa.
much so. Yes, I mean, and again, I'm not the guy to count on my bets. I'm not a guy who, let's put it all on black. Let's see what happens. I think the gentlemen you mentioned and their stories, the hero, and I think ever since really leading up to the 2001 and after that, I think the hero has taken a little bit of a dark turn, whereas before he was a fairly pristine, all-American, could do no wrong kind of thing. But afterward, I think there was a bit of an edge to the protagonist, to the hero you want to love, and I think the audience, also yearns for a badass good guy, which a lot of the films that you mentioned and McTiernan and Predator, et cetera, they have that edge. They want to see this guy not only be an all-American, a good superhero, if you will, but they want that edge. You can be pushed so far And then even your good guy hero has to have that flinch, has to have that turn where he sort of turns the tables and becomes, oh my God, for that second even, just the baddest ass, dude. I think in a sense, in a sort of a, I don't know, maybe a few degrees turn down from there. I think the Wishmaster was kind of that, but ever the underdog, because he couldn't make his own wishes. He had to sort of manipulate other people's wishes. I think people in the audience, when that thing first came across, they were waiting to see what was going to happen, almost like a what's around the next turn of the roller coaster kind of thing. Hope it's dangerous and hope it makes me shriek and scream and freaks me out and it's brand new for me. But I kind of, people ask me sometimes, do I feel typecast playing the bad guy? And I really don't. I'll share. I played a couple of good guys. I must tell you, I've never been so bored in my career. But because a good guy can, God forbid he should scold a puppy. Whereas, if you have a bad guy, you figure he's going to come across a cat or whatever and kick it. But if he bends down and it gives it a little scratch on the head, oh my God!
And then he kicks it.
Yeah, right, right.
What a good boy.
But I just again going back to the great premise of your question, you can never tell, brother. You can never tell what the super sauce, what the secret sauce is. And as Robert said, you just show up, you do your best. And again, you count on there being a collaboration and you know that everybody showed up. Like you were saying, batters, there's 9 of them and they all got to work together. Then they got to go out in the field and do what they got to do out there. And then the boss is watching, making sure he orchestrates everything. So that's, it's talk about serendipity, baby. You never know. You never know.
I think too, if you look at those movies that we consider timeless, that everyone will continue to watch and love, if they're entertaining, no matter what their flaws are, if you keep the audience engaged and they're entertaining, that's why Evil Dead's Evil Dead's one of those perfect movies where it's so flawed and with everything, dated effects, whatever you wanted to say, but there's one thing Sam told me when I was directing my first film. He just said, make sure they'll forgive everything. They'll forgive acting, production value, any bad effects, whatever, as long as you keep them totally engaged and entertained. So I think those movies are that way, the ones you're speaking of. So the ones that everyone gravitates towards. So, and I try to not bore the audience. Just keep it going and they're having fun,
See, you're getting a master class. So in the last few minutes that we have, thanks everybody. Why don't you, there should be a mic out there if you want to ask a few questions before we wrap things up. I'm sure you have some questions. So right there at the mic, there's a spotlight. You can be in the spotlight. It's time to light the lights.
Stage is yours, even you, Patty.
Okay. Fantastic. Go ahead.
Hi, how's it going, guys? I had a question for Andrew first. What was the most memorable experience you had working on the Wishmaster movies that you did?
I would always get a kick out of being sort of when we were resting. I had an RC motor on my back to articulate these sort of antlers or the horns, if you will. And I remember that. So when I would sit in a chair, I would literally be sitting like this. And so after a while I said, let's get a 2x10 board and we'll prop it on the wall. And then I just kind of lean back and I'd be there for a while. And I remember sort of off in the shadows, kind of just chilling, maybe getting some shut eye. And I remember people would walk back and forth and not notice that I was there. And then every now and then they'd notice and they'd freak and they'd go, oh, and it freaked me out. And one of the crew's moms had showed up one day, and I just kind of wanted to have some fun, and So she walked by a couple of times and didn't notice I was there. And one of the times I just kind of gave, just kind of did that, freaked her out. And that was kind of fun for me. That was my fun. Other than that, I think there was a day with Tammy, and this was a day when Robert did, thankfully, he said, no, I want that, and so the line is, fuck it, like that, and so kind of Robert said, I want to, because it was, I was giving it more of them, no, fuck it, like that, but Robert said, no, I want it, bite it, give it a bite, make it, and so that was cool, and it was cool to see Tammy Lauren's reaction to that too. And I got to tell you, I kind of felt good saying it that way. It's kind of fun. But, thanks for the question, brother.
Yeah, of course. I also had a question for you, Robert. What was the most memorable effect on Wishmaster for you? Because there's obviously that beginning scene in Wishmaster, which is absolutely crazy. I wonder if you had a favorite from that.
Well, I have to say, I love the guy getting split out of the skin in the opening or whatever. There's just so much going on. But I'm fond of the statue sequence in the hallway at Beaumont's mansion at the end. I really loved making those statues and what the guys pulled off. And I thought that was the most fun. Just my favorite kind of scene, though, initially doesn't have you in it, the first part of it, but the whole thing. It's when Wendy, or the professor, I'm sorry, is sitting with Tammy, and they're doing the back and forth, and she keeps trying to get a wish out of her, and then you realize that she's you know. Right. And I thought that was just a really fun sequence to do, and that they tore it up, and then it just keeps going. And
she was wonderful. Wonderful actress. You're right. It was kind of, and then it's so wonderful to watch Tammy Lauren realize that, oh, right, let me get them out of here, because, yeah, it's beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
No Bride of Reanimator questions for Robert? No.
I talked to Robert on Friday about Bride of Reanimator. It was very cool.
Okay. And we're any last question? Because we got to wrap it up here. So of course, they'll be at their booth signing. So if you're shy and you don't want to be in the spotlight, you can go talk to them at their booth, get their autographs, talk to them about their careers. So look, thank you so much for joining us this morning, getting up early on a Sunday, missing church, whatever.
Sorry to interrupt. Would you mind if I did a little kind of a treat thing I like to do for the
Please
fans
do.
at the end of the thing?
Absolutely.
I will ask them to all close their eyes if they would join in. If Robert, you can keep yours open. So please close your eyes, and we'll do a little quote here for you.
Run, insect. Run and tell those you will what you will. Tell them there is something loose in their city, something which feeds on wishes. But tell them quickly while you still have a soul.
Thank you, guys.
Which is the nice way of saying.
Wow, that was really fun. It's always great to sit down here on Deck 78 and discuss things we can on the other podcasts.
Yeah, well, we could, but people would stop listening.
I know.
That's right. They would say, this is not Star Trek. This is not the 4:30 movie. This is not list of podcasts go here. But
well, now, I don't want to break the illusion, but, we're not really on Deck 78. So if you were, what would you be drinking, Steve?
What would I be drinking? I'd be drinking a pina colada.
And getting caught in the rain?
Getting caught in the rain.
Wow, I wish it would rain. Okay, what about you, Darren? What would you be drinking on Deck 78 if we were actually together on a starship?
I think I'd have a Pan-Galactic Gargle Blaster.
Ooh, that sounds good. What about you, Ashley?
You know what? I'm going to go with the blood of my enemies.
The blood of your enemies. Okay, well, that's great. Well, thanks for joining us for another Deck 78.
Wait, what's your drink, Mark?
Yeah, Mark.
Vodka cran?
Sure. I'd like a
Taking the easy
chocolate
way out.
milkshake in a silver chalice.
In a silver goblet.
A silver goblet. Okay. So you're listening
Pure
to
rainwater.
Deck 78, Inglorious Treksperts, Treksperts Briefing Room are part of the Treksperts Podcast Network. Copyright 2025 by Treksperts Plus. Executive producers are Mark A. Altman, Darren Docterman, Ashley Miller, and Stephen Melching. The show is produced by Peter Holmstrom, Brian Mix. Original music by Joe Kramer. Original music by Darren Docterman in this case. Video editing by Brian Mix. You can open hailing frequencies with us by emailing us at trekspertsplus@gmail, and you can find us on all major social channels at Inglorious Trek or 430 Movie Pod at Instagram, Facebook, Threads, Twitter, and Blue Sky. You can also subscribe to Deck 78 on the Inglorious Treksperts feed or at the 430 Movie subscription feed. So until 2 weeks from now, thanks for joining us on Deck 78. We can't wait to see you again. And until then, fire the rockets.
Deck 78 is an exclusive podcast from Treksperts Plus.